Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. I'm back today with another shaker card. This time I'm going to be making it a 4-section shaker card. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and create my background. I'm going to be using some different distressings to do this, and I've sped up this part of the video because it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just using a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sheet of watercolor paper here. And I've got my mini ink blending tools. I'm going to be using some picked raspberry, twisted citron, dusty concord, and mermaid lagoon distressings here just to kind of blend out a background. It's going to be very colorful. Now I'm pulling the colors from the Craft and Desert Divas monthly challenge. They have a mood board over on the Facebook page, and you can see the mood board. It's got all these different pictures, different colors that you can pull from to get inspiration for your cards. Then whenever you make your card, you go ahead and enter it into the challenge over on the Facebook page, and you'll be eligible to win some prizes. There's still time to do this. It lasts all month long, and then at the beginning of every month, a new mood board is entered and you can start the challenge all over again. So I am just going to go ahead and quickly blend out these inks on my paper. I'm doing 4 different tones here, and I'm working from the 4 different corners, bringing the blue and the green in a little bit further, and then I'll go ahead and blend out the purple and pink as well. You can see once I get this kind of layered up with some ink, I did move to a paper towel holding it down. That's just so my fingerprints don't get left in this ink. This is very reactive with water, or the oils on your fingers will also move around. You can see I was able to splatter some water and then mop that up with a paper towel and get some really nice bleach spots on my paper too. So that's how reactive this distress ink is with water. It also will move around with your fingertips if you touch it too much. Now to create this 4-section part of my shaker card, I'm actually going to be using the Fancy Frames die set from Craft and Desert Divas, and I've used the largest scalloped rectangle from that set to just die cut a piece of white cardstock. So once I have that die cut, I'm just going to use my ruler and go from the stitched lines. I'm not going from the outside of the die cut. I'm using those stitched lines as my guide, and I'm going to the center of this die cut vertically and horizontally. Then once I have that down, I'm actually going to bring in my T-square ruler so I get nice straight lines, and just go ahead and cut this into 4 different sections with my pencil line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line horizontally, and then I'll go ahead and draw the longer one vertically, and this is going to give me 4 perfect sections on my die cut so I can center up my 4 die cuts. You could eyeball this if you wanted to. I just like to have those lines there as a guide, just because anytime I try to eyeball anything, it ends up crooked, so I just like to give myself some guides. Now I'm going to be using the cactus die. This was brand new last month, and it was actually a freebie if you spent $50 or more when you ordered from the new release. So some of you might have got this die cut for free, but I'm going to be using that to cut 4 cactuses right into each one of those little sections that I've drawn out, making sure I stay inside those stitched lines that are on the actual Fancy Frame die cut. Now whenever I put my die down on my paper, I am using little bits of painter's tape to hold these in place. Now if you have the magnetic platform, you can use that too. But if you just put this down on your die cutting machine and you run this through, your die will move just a little bit every time. Just the pressure of the machine moves it a little bit before it cuts it. So just hold it in place with a little bit of washi tape, painter's tape, whatever you might have on hand when you do your die cutting. Now I'm just going to remove those pencil lines with a good eraser and make sure they're all gone, because this is such a stark white piece of paper against a colorful background. Any pencil lines I leave on there are going to be really noticeable. So whenever I drew in the pencil lines, I used a really light hand. They were very, very almost unnoticeable pencil lines, and then I used a really good eraser that wouldn't smear that lead, and it would just remove it. Now, whenever I put my shakers together, I like to use fun foam. I have a hard time with foam tape. It gets stuck to my scissors, I get frustrated, and I give up. So I like to cut my fun foam down to size and use my double-sided adhesive. Whenever I started putting this shaker card together, I did put down one side of fun foam before I did a really important part though. I didn't put my clear piece of acetate over my die cuts first. So I had to go in and fix that. So what I decided to do was I went ahead and grabbed my acetate, and instead of trying to rip up that foam that I've put down, because this is really strong adhesive that I use, instead of trying to rip that up, ruining that piece that I've already spent all the time die cutting, I just went ahead and grabbed that acetate. I'm going to cut it down to size, and so it bumps snugly up against that piece of fun foam that I've already put down. Make sure that it fits on this die cut, both vertically and horizontally. I'm going to go ahead and cut it down. And then I'll use a little bit of glossy accents. Any strong liquid glue would do. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a very thin line of it up against that fun foam. And I'll use my strong adhesive, my paper adhesive, on the other two portions where I'm going to go ahead and hold that in place. So you can see I just put a very thin line right up against that fun foam. I'll go ahead and remove my backing strips on my other pieces of adhesive. Then I'll just bump that right up so it fits snugly up against that piece of fun foam I already have down, and that will hold in my sequins. Nothing's going to escape on me here. Even if I have tiny little seed beads in my sequin mix, I'll be okay. So then I went ahead and started putting on my fun foam now that I had my die cuts covered up. So I'm just going to be using different pieces that I've cut down to different sizes so they fit around those cactuses pretty snugly. And I want to make 4 different sections. I want each one to be its own little section. You could make this one big shaker if you wanted to, but then all your sequins are going to fall down to the bottom of those bottom 2 cactuses. And it's not going to shake around in each individual portion. Now I went ahead and used the same sequin mix on this shaker card as well. Whenever you're doing section shaker cards though, you can use all the different sequin mixes you want to in that. You can do a rainbow order, you could do every other sort of thing, whatever you wanted to do. It's fun to do your section shakers because then you get to use more sequins. But once I had all my different fun foams put down along the 4 corners, and then I'm going to go ahead and put one right down the middle vertically, and then I'll have to cut a piece in half and do 2 different sections horizontally. And you can see that I do not cut my fun foam down to size until I have one piece bumped up against the starting section, and then I go ahead and measure and then snip off where I need to, so everything fits very snugly on my card front. I don't like any spaces. I don't like to measure it beforehand just in case something doesn't fit right. Then I might have, even if I used little glitter, then it might be falling out if I have any little holes. So I like to measure as I go along. Now when using sequin mixes, one thing I like to do is dump them all out into a bowl. Whenever my sequin mixes sit for a long period of time, I always get one kind of sequin in the mix that ends up on the bottom. It might be the tiniest, it might be the heaviest if it's a seed bead mix. So I like to dump them all in a bowl, give them a good mix. This is just a little baby spoon that you can get for a big pack of them for a couple bucks. I have them saved from when my daughter ate baby food. But I just give them a good mix in a little bowl and then use that to scoop them up. And that way I get a nice true mix of the sequins. I also like to prep my shaker cards with my anti-static tool just in case I have any static in my sequins or on that acetate. Especially if you live in a dry climate, you'll get that static and you'll get your sequins. They'll just act a little crazy in there. They'll stick to different portions you don't want them to. And also that anti-static tool is going to take care of any adhesive that you might have hanging out from your fun foam, or if you use liquid adhesive, it will take care of that as well. Then your sequins won't get glued to one side of your shaker. Once I have my sequins in there, I go ahead and put adhesive around the back of that fun foam now. I'll go ahead and remove the backing paper. Now, to do this, you could always put another clear piece over the back of this and then flip this over and adhere it onto the colored portion of this. Or you could put, if you're just using a white background, you can go ahead and put a white piece of cardstock behind that. I tried to line this up with just my eyes, and like I said before, anytime I try to eyeball it, I mess it up. So you'll see I tried to line this up, and I'm trying to use my grid mat in back there. And once I put this down and flip it over, you'll see it is completely uneven. So I needed to fix it. So whenever you're making a card like this, just make sure you put the clear backing on it. Don't try and eyeball it and get around it like I did, because then you have to figure out a whole new design. So what I decided to do was I trimmed it down so it was even on all the sides. I went ahead and covered an A2 top folding white card base with a piece of black cardstock. You could use a black card base, but then you have to insert a piece of white cardstock inside to write on. Once I had that black adhered on top of the card base, I went ahead and put some double-sided adhesive on the back of my shaker, and then I'll just pop that up right onto that card base. And this is going to have a little black peeking out on both sides. It wasn't intended to, but that's how it happened. And then it was still a little wonky, so to go ahead and fix that, I went ahead and used the Simply Said sentiment stamp set from Craft and Desert Divas. I used the Happy Birthday sentiment from that and some black dye ink and stamped that right in the middle of the cactuses. And then I'll use some Ranger enamel accents and black tie to kind of help hide the fact that it's a little wonky still. And in order to do that, I went